Well, I'm super excited to have Lara J. Day, the creator of the 13 Holy Nights card deck and guidebook, back. We had an amazing conversation about the 13 Holy Nights in our previous podcast together. So if you're interested, you can go back and listen to that one. And she offered a lot of deep wisdom in there that I thought was beautiful. And today we're going to dive into a very different topic in many ways, but also the same in some ways, which when Lara presented the idea to me, I thought, wow, that's an amazing concept. And I'd personally be very interested to learn about this. So we're going to get into the real truth behind a lot of these holidays that most people are pretty blind to. And fortunately, I've studied some of it. But when someone like Lara offers a topic like that, I'm like, oh, good, I get to learn more. So Lara, welcome back. And how have you been? And what have you done to revise your 13 Holy Nights deck and guidebook? I got it, by the way. Thank you. I just haven't had a chance to look through it.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thank you. I'm so happy to be back. We had such a wonderful connection and conversation previously. So I'm excited to dive in with you again. Yeah, well, life has been up and down and all around. And as far as the Oracle deck goes, it is now published by Beyond Words Publishing. So that's exciting because previously I was a self-published author.
Right.
And so I had the opportunity to go back and add a bunch of things that I had sort of thought about the first time around. But at a certain point, you just have to get your work into the world. And so I was able to add a history section on the winter solstice, a brief history section. Yeah, on the winter solstice, which sort of fluffs out the whole topic and gives you a little bit of context for where this practice came from. The winter solstice practice, right? And then I added a meditation, a ritual practice to each of the 52 cards.
Oh, neat.
So there are 52 cards, animals, herbs, and crystals, as you know. And now each card and essay has an additional meditation to go along with it. So that's exciting, sort of an action step, something that people can implement and do when they draw that particular card. I added a frequently asked questions section, which is crucial because in 5 years of teaching this practice, I get the same questions over and over and over again every year. And so that also additionally just really helps to fill out, what the practice is, how we do it, answer some of those questions that tend to come up. So those are some of the major things that I added. But, by and large, it's the same Oracle deck with the same practice and the same teachings and the same artwork. It does have a new title. It's now called the 13 Sacred Nights, which felt a little awkward to me at first because I had been doing the practice for, now 17 years. And it's kind of like renaming your old dog,
Right.
It felt odd to me. Like, wait, I've called it the Holy Nights forever. But it does make sense to me to shift to the name if we're casting a wider net, because just in our society, people tend to associate the word holy with Christianity, the Holy Bible, the Holy Child, oh, holy nights. And a lot of folks who are not Christian would take one glance at it on a shelf and say, oh, that's not for me, when in fact the practice is non-denominational. So even though the words holy and sacred, if you look them up in the dictionary, they have the exact same meaning. Culturally, we tend to associate sacred with a much broader, within a much broader context. So it is now called the 13 Sacred Nights Oracle, and those are some of the changes that we made.
Awesome. Well, what inspired you to look deeper into the story of our main holidays and uncover the information that we're going to be exploring today? I was curious about that. That's a sort of an interesting investigation. So something must have triggered you.
Yeah. Well, there were a couple of things. One, I'm diving into, my publishers asked me, they said, oh, would you please write a history section for the Oracle deck? We think it's interesting. I'm curious. We think people will be curious. And I realized in that moment, wow, I've been practicing the Holy Nights, the Sacred Nights for, 15 years, but I have no idea where this practice really came from other than my teacher taught it to me. So that was the initial dive. And when I did that dive, as we spoke about in our last conversation, I really uncovered a lot of very surprising history about the Christmas holidays, the winter holidays, just the whole winter solstice period. And, where all of our current traditions actually came from, which is likely not what most people assume. And so that was fascinating to me. And I began talking about that. And inevitably, folks would ask, well, what about Halloween, or what do you know about Valentine's Day? And initially I would just sort of go, well, no, I'm just the Christmas girl,
Santa's little elf.
Yeah, I don't know about those other holidays, but eventually curiosity got the better of me, and so I went ahead, and this last year I read 31 books on the history of our holidays and lots of adjacent topics, and in the end, it can still often be a very complex, tangled, and muddy picture. But when you take a bigger sampling of writing, you start to put together, okay, well, this person says it was this way, but this person over here says, no, that's false. And, so you can begin to distill it down into a clearer picture of perhaps where some of this stuff came from.
Yeah. So, in our prep together, in one of your statement, you said perhaps it's time to consciously choose how we celebrate our holy days. So what led you to putting that statement together? Because you're making, you even italicize conscious. To me, what that means is we're not really doing what we think we're doing. We're acting unconsciously. We're just doing what everybody else is doing. And that can imply that maybe we're celebrating something we don't really understand what we're celebrating, and it may not be what we want it to be or think it is, which is, I worked with Angeli's, let's see, I'm trying to remember, Laurel Erica, who's an English expert. And when she starts breaking down the meanings of the words, like when you say good morning to somebody, you're actually, saying like, good sadness over the death of somebody, not what we think it is. And so when she started breaking all these words down that we use commonly, but we have no idea what we're saying to each other, it was quite shocking. So I get the feeling that you've identified that we're walking blindly into these holidays, and maybe we need to be a bit more conscious to what we're actually celebrating. So certainly that's what we're going to get into, but what were some of the things that led you to put that word consciously in italics there?
Yeah, good. I'm glad you noticed. Of course you would.
Yeah.
But really, holidays and ritual and sacred moments are so incredibly powerful because this is a collective agreement, right, among an entire culture that we are pausing to recognize that this thing is sacred. This thing is of utmost importance to us in our current culture, right? And when we do that collectively, I'm sure you'll agree, Paul, that we are, therefore really collectively cementing that thing into our reality.
Yeah.
We're passing it on to future generations. We're all in agreement that this thing is important and part of our reality. So those in positions of power have long known this to be true.
Sure.
And our holidays have been used time and time again. There's been really a multi-layered process of our holidays and our sacred moments being used to, in fact, mold the behavior of the masses.
Yep.
And so I like to say that holidays are not just mirrors. Of course, they reflect back to us what it is that we hold most dear as a culture, but they're also molds. They're also literally shaping society and culture and reality moving forward.
Yes.
So, yeah. So the majority of our holidays that we celebrate in the United States have gone through this sort of like a layer cake, 4-layer process. Each one has its own, little stories here and there, and some of them are fascinating and hilarious. But for the most part, they've gone through this process of coming from a place of original pagan practice, cultures that were tuned in to nature, that were in alignment with the rhythm of the seasons. They were paying attention to the cosmos, the position of the stars, the heavenly bodies, the sun, the moon, right? And all these cycles, they were really a part of that pulse. And And so then you have from that original layer, which in and of itself was complex, and cultures, intertwining and borrowing from each other and whatnot. But then you have the Christian overlay, where they, the Roman Catholic Church basically attempted to
wipe out the pagans.
wipe out the pagans, but they believed that they would more willingly convert if they allowed them to keep some of their holidays and festivals, but gave them new Christian meaning. So there was this kind of overlay or co-opting of the pagan rituals and holidays. Well, then you fast forward into the Victorian age, the 1800s. And although there was this Christian overlay, darn those rowdy, pagans, it was really hard to stamp out some of their rowdiness, some of their mischievousness, and a lot of the traditions were still kind of bubbling up or percolating up, through the veneer of Christianity.
Thank God.
Yeah, thank God. And so then there was this domestication of further domestication of the holidays, where they, really tried to overlay a more tame, version of these holidays, more family friendly. And then on top of that, you have commercialism coming in the 1900s, so it's kind of this 4-layer cake that happened really to all of our holidays. And each one, like I said, has its own unique story, but that's kind of the bigger picture of what happened. So here we are, in 2025, and we're celebrating Halloween with individually packed Nestle candy bars or what have you, and
poison.
Poison, all kinds of poisons, store-bought costumes. Pretty much, I like to say that our holidays have become a revolving door of shopping, sugar, and alcohol.
Yep.
But what are we celebrating? We're celebrating materialism. We're celebrating commercialism. We're celebrating sugar. We're celebrating shopping. These, again, if you go back to our holidays, are not only a reflection of who we are as a culture, we are also molding, shaping reality moving forward.
Yep.
Perhaps, like you mentioned, perhaps we want to be more conscious about how we're celebrating these sacred days. Take a step back and say, what do we want? What do we want to teach our children is most important about being human and here on planet Earth?
Yeah, there's two things that I want to highlight. And of course, we're going to get into each of these holidays to hear these stories, because that's, why we're doing this. But I'm very interested in all that. And thank you for doing all that research for me.
I'm still going. It's never ending. As you know, we share that in common, the book addiction.
Well, I think both of us have the willingness to answer questions that most people just blow off and, act unconsciously as we're talking about. But the other thing that I wanted to say is that the word sacred has some different meanings that I think are important. Sacred is related to sacrifice. So that which is sacred turns out to be that which we're willing to sacrifice for. For example, to a farmer, the animals and the plants are sacred, and one must sacrifice to make sure that they tend to them and care for them, or you're going to starve to death. A birthday is sacred, and mother made a sacrifice to carry it and give birth to it, and all the complications that come with that. And then there's the sacrifice that a couple has when they have a child and they lose all the free time they used to have, and now they're, nurturing God in a body, and so there's a sacrifice. If we have a meditation practice because it's sacred to us, then we have to sacrifice things like, social media, surfing and television and distractions, and we make a sacrifice for the sacred. So I think, part of what you're really pointing out from my perspective is that what we think of as sacred holidays are actually turning out to be the sacrifices we're making to keep big corporations and corporate religion in power and in dominance, and taking as much money as they can get out of our pockets as possible. so that my first comment then is sacred is directly related to sacrifice and that which is most important in our lives. The second is a question: do you know why we have daylight savings time? Because I looked into that, because it causes a lot of circadian stress disruption for people, and it has a lot of problems associated with it, and I find it very irritating myself. And so I looked into why we have daylight savings time. Have you ever looked into that?
I've been in conversation about that numerous times with different, with all kinds of people, and nobody seems to be able to come to any agreement. So I'm really curious what you discovered. But what we are all in agreement around is that nobody likes it. I have never talked to a single person who actually thinks it's a good idea. So I don't actually know what the true reason for creating that was.
It was created by various business organizations that got together and figured out that by creating daylight savings time, they could extend the shopping day by an hour.
Yeah. Well, that's not surprising. That's a similar reason as to why Thanksgiving landed exactly where it did in our calendar, because it extends it sort of kicks off the shopping period for holiday shopping, for Christmas shopping, and they didn't want it too close to Christmas because they wanted to extend that period.
Right. So here we go. We can go through all these holidays.
Similar motive. Yeah.
There's lots of things I want to say, but I don't want to spoil the fun. Yeah. But I think, I will preempt the conversation we're about to have and what you're about to share. We need to really look at the cultural myth that we're largely unconsciously living out. And there's a reason we have the saying, shop till you drop, as what you do when you're depressed or you feel empty inside. And the myth our culture has fallen into, once we thought it was capitalism, it's now really become consumerism. Yeah. And I think it's because of a lack of connection to what is sacred and what is holy, and to what the pagans worship, which is, life and earth and the elements, earth, water, fire, and air, and the mystery of life itself, which a paradox that the Christians want to get rid of that. Yes, and a paradox, but not a surprise when you understand what's really going on with too much of Christianity and also other religions. But that we really have to look carefully at what is the myth, because if you're not conscious of the myth you're living out, then, as some mythologists would say, you've been mythed, which is like being hexed.
Yeah.
And if you are conscious of the myth, but if you're hexed or mythed, you're fated. You're just living out your fate, which for a lot of people in this country, when you look at what the foods are and the ways we celebrate these things, they're mythed with bad health. Look at the diabetes issues we have going on. Look at the rotten teeth and the malfunctioning bodies all over, and the chronic disease right to children. And that's what it means to be myth. That's the fate of living unconsciously. But when you're conscious of what your myth is personally and culturally, then you are able to create your destiny as a co-creator with Great Spirit or Source or God, because you're using the co-creative power invested in you to create the life you want to live, which ultimately is the acting out of the story that you believe to be the reason that you're here and what your life is all about. And so few people are conscious of that at all. And I think, we're in a worldwide situation where we're having a tremendous myth clash between, in our culture, Christianity and scientific materialism. And in other cultures, whether it be Islam or Judaism or Taoism or whatever it is, they're all clashing with scientific materialism, and they've already clashed with capitalism. All you got to do is look at what importing the Western ideology to China has done to China, for example, and many other countries. It's always amazing to me. You go to third world countries where people can't even afford a bowl of rice and beans, but they've got a cell phone. It's like, okay, there you go. Little did Steve Jobs realize the dragon he was unleashing, or maybe he did. I don't know. Some say he was working with the CIA, so that's another possibility. But I think that the real point I'm saying is what you're really exposing is the difference between being mythed, living unconsciously, and being a robot under the control of others with invisible strings pulling on you, which they wrap up and disguise as something holy, so you'll open your wallet, versus really understanding what is the myth that's attached to each of these holidays. What is it actually intended for? And how can we do it consciously and use it to co-create something beautiful, both for ourselves, our family, our friends, our social circles, our community, our culture, our nation and our culture. And I think if we don't wake up to these things, then people like the World Economic Forum and Bill Gates and his minions and even the government, they're just going to bleed us completely out. And not only that, it's a question: what's going to run out of money first, the planet or the resources of the planet, or the resources of humanity? And either way, it just goes right back to the same hoodwinking that's been going on from the top down for thousands of years. So with that preamble from me, feel free to take us away.
Yeah, well, that was so beautifully said, Paul. And just 100%. I think the way that I would briefly wrap that up is choose or be chosen. Right. Yeah. And what I think is important about exposing some of the more detailed history of all of these holidays is that people tend to get very defensive about their quote unquote traditions, right? And even angry. And, and I've had some of that blowback, and just in the little bit that I've sort of put these ideas out into the world, it's like, don't take my Santa Claus away. What a bah humbug you are, you Scrooge, you're a terrible parent, those kinds of things. And I think if we understood, like, hey, hold on a minute, before you defend this thing that you actually don't know where it came from, and it was actually spoon-fed to you by the elites in order to manipulate your behavior. Perhaps if you understand that, then you might be more agreeable to pausing and consciously, there's that word again, consciously choosing, hey, how do I want to celebrate this? And maybe we want to continue carrying on some of the traditions that are currently in place, because maybe they do nourish us and maybe they do bring us together with family and friends. It's not that we have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? But there's an opportunity for us all to pause and go, okay, what do we want? What is the world that we want to live into? What is sacred? What's worth sacrificing, as you're saying?
I think one of the reasons that holidays are so popular is because it's just a chance for a day or two or three to get off the damn industrial treadmill of, just bleeding yourself out. Research shows that 70 to 75% of all people interviewed worldwide, when asked if they are happy with or like their job, reply no. Most say they hate their job, right?
It's painful.
So I think the holidays are really, almost like just a chance to go get shit-faced drunk and watch football and get out of off the treadmill of the industrial complex, And
absolutely.
So if you start messing with the holidays, people probably are reflexively thinking, oh my God, she's trying to take away my beer time or my football or my chance to stare at the wall and do nothing.
Right. Well, even the phrase "go on holiday" maybe these days might just mean go on a vacation, or it's a holiday. It just means a day off of work. It doesn't always have any deeper meaning. But should we take a look first at Halloween, since we're in October now, and it's just the first thing that's coming up?
Educate me, because I want to see what we've done. The girls love, and they love to give the kids the most wild experiences. And if you were here right now, you'd see goblins and ghosts and coffins, and we have a great big huge giant spider at the front door, which is pretty wild. If you get too close to it or make some noise, it comes up at you like it's going
It
to
moves.
get
Oh
you.
gosh.
It's big too. It's like,
Yeah.
a foot and a half or two across. And the first thing I said to Penny, the kids had to show me, they're like, Daddy, you got to see this. And I'm like, oh my God, I can just see the UPS man just crapping his pants and dropping something and breaking it. So I don't know if they modified it, but it's actually quite a scary little thing at the front door. But anyhow, the Angie and Penny always make the holidays just like the whole place transforms, and it's like the magic thing for the kids. So we do have fun with it that way.
If you've been listening to this podcast for any length of time, you've probably heard Paul raving about one of his absolute go-to supplements, P3OM from Bioptimizers. Well, they've given it a new name, Probiotic Breakthrough. It's the same amazing formulation, just with a new name. Here's a chat that Paul and Wayne had about Probiotic Breakthrough before it changed its name.
Bioptimizers makes an amazing product called P3OM, which is a prebiotic product. And it's amazing for not only helping repopulate the gut with friendly bacteria, but as Wade will tell you, it's really, really an amazing product in case you ever feel like you're getting any kind of food poisoning or illness coming on. And Wade's right here with me, and he's the co-founder of Bioptimizers, and he knows more about P3OM than anybody. But I can tell you this, I've had nothing but excellent results and nothing but positive feedback from all my clients and friends that I've turned on to P3OM. So Wade, tell us a little bit about P3OM and why it works so well.
Well, P3OM we call it the Navy SEAL of probiotics.
Amen.
Basically, its job is to kick out the bad guys in your body. Food poisoning is one of those things from bad bacteria. What we've done is we've taken an aggressive strain of L. plantarum. We put it into toxic soup, ran a sine wave to keep a few of them alive. And the few survivors we grow in very specialized medium to make a cultured, patented enzyme that has extraordinary powers. Number one, it survives the intestinal tract.
Yes.
And number two, it is absolutely hunts down pathogens in the body, bacteria, viruses, these type of things. And this is really where the future of probiotics is. It is about developing and culturing and creating super strains of probiotic, very much like the Navy SEALs goes through a training, and these individuals have extraordinary powers to deal with chaos. And in today's world where we want to improve our immunity and our function and our gut health, P3OM is head and shoulders above any probiotic out there.
So my understanding is it can be used daily as a supplement, but it can also be used in larger quantities as a defense measure.
We've tested this literally with over 100 of our friends who have been suffering from various times of food poisoning. And a handful of those guys, when you're in food poisoning, and within 20 to 30 minutes, you complete recovery.
That's awesome. And I've seen it happen myself. Angie has felt bad a number of times, and several of people in the house or family have. And I say, take 10. If that doesn't feel good in an hour, take 20. And you've told me you can't overdose on them, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's the beauty of P3OM. You can't take too much. They'll fight off the bad guys, and they'll get your digestion rocking and rolling the way it should.
So if you want to have a healthy gut and you want some defense, carry P3OM with you wherever you go, airplanes, cars, business meetings, hotels, conferences, and you've got your Navy SEALs in the bottle, and they're ready for you anytime.
Spirit Gym with Paul Chek listeners now get 15% off their purchase of Probiotic Breakthrough by going to bioptimizers.com/Spirit Gym and use the code PAUL15 at checkout. You can choose from 3 different sizes, and in addition, Bioptimizers always have special bonus gifts and additional savings when you get multiple bottles. So head to bioptimizers.com/Spirit Gym and check out Probiotic Breakthrough with the code PAUL15 for 15% off.
Yeah. Well, and let me preface Halloween by saying I also have a blast with Halloween, right? And my daughter is a musician. And for the last, 8 or so years, she has dressed up as a different, musical rock star from different genres. And then she learns one of their songs, and she's got like this whole fan club of people every year who can't wait to see who she's going to be. And, you know, she's done Prince and David Bowie and Elton John and Dolly Parton and Willie, you know, it's so fun. So,
well, if she posts anything on Instagram or social media, please forward me a link. I'd love to see it.
Oh yeah, I will. So she, you know, it's not that we have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm not trying to be a holiday killjoy, right?
No.
Like, it's just let's think about what our practices are teaching our children. Could we take it a step beyond the commercialism and decide, you know, what we really want this to be about? So Halloween originally, the way we celebrate here in the United States, trickled down from Celtic cultures and Samhain, right? Which was the Celtic ritual that was celebrated in the fall season. And it was said to be the time when the veil was at its thinnest and the spirits of the dead walked amongst the living. And so, being that there were spirits everywhere, some of them were benevolent, a lot of them were beloved ancestors, and then some of them were more mischievous in nature. And so the guising or costumes was in fact to trick the spirits into not recognizing the living, or, you know, to sort of play this game with the spirits that were said to be walking amongst the living. Likewise, that was where the trick-or-treating originally sort of came from, placing treats or food out for the spirits, which eventually then sort of morphed into perhaps people, you know, dressing up in costumes, pretending to be spirits in order to partake in these treats, right? And so you can see how
tricking the spirits out of their treats.
Tricking the spirits out of their treats. And that is also, again, it's where the trick element of the trick or treat came from in this holiday, was that it became an opportunity for mischievous youths to play tricks and pranks and cause mischief, and then they would blame it on the spirits, right? and so that was sort of where originally a lot of the what we now celebrate as Halloween came from. The story of the jack-o'-lantern is kind of sweet. There was an ancient myth that there was a not so great guy, Jack, who he was not so great. He was not well liked, but he was also very intelligent, and he tricked the devil into promising that he would never take him into hell. And so when Jack passed, he wasn't good enough to get into heaven, but he had already, you know, made this deal with the devil that he would also never go to hell. So he was destined to you know, walk to be a ghost, essentially, to, you know, walk the earth disembodied for all of eternity. And the devil, I don't know if he felt sorry for him or if it was just to spite him, he kicked him a fiery coal from heaven. And in Ireland at the time, they had lots of turnips. And so he carved out a turnip and put the fiery coal in the turnip and, you know, carried that around for light in the darkness, in the eternal darkness. Well, when that tradition came over to the United States, we had pumpkins, which were much better than turnips. And so that's how our jack-o'-lanterns came to be, was Jack of the Lantern, right? Jack-o'-lantern.
Well, it's cool. There's a little trick in there that you just said. I don't know if most people picked it up, but you said the devil kicked him a coal from heaven.
Oh, I did. I meant to say from hell. Did I say heaven?
I was saying, what's the devil doing in heaven?
That wasn't a trick. That was a flub. No, the devil kicked him a fiery coal from hell. Excuse me.
Oh, okay.
So that's our Jack of the Lantern.
A little hell to light the way on earth.
Yeah, but but if you take a look at cultures in all around, you know, the world, a lot of them have sort of similar rites and rituals in the fall season, because what's happening in nature? Well, things are decaying and dying, right? So it's a very natural time for humans who are in contact with the cycle of life and with the seasons, the cycle of the seasons, to begin thinking about themes of our own mortality and death. So while our traditions tend to come from Scotland and Ireland and these Celtic roots of Samhain, you'll see similar festivals and cultures all around the world, and, you know, on all the different continents. So that's the first layer, right? And then remember I talked about the four layer cake. The second layer that would come in is the Christian overlay. And so they established what they called All Saints Day to celebrate all of the saints who had passed away on November 1st. And then they declared November 2nd All Souls Day. So we would then celebrate all the souls, not just the saints.
The saints came first.
The saints came first. The saints got to be celebrated first. They're more special than the rest of us. And this tradition of the saints' days was nearly every day in the year-long calendar had a saint associated with it at one point in time, and they were essentially the first Christians who were unwilling to denounce or renounce their new Christian beliefs. When it was illegal, when Christianity was illegal in the Roman Empire, and they were then killed and martyred. And so that's where the calendar of the saints came from. So Christianity declares All Souls Day, or All Saints Day and All Souls Day. And then the evening before becomes All Hallows Eve, All Hallows Evening, or Halloween. It eventually got shortened into. But Christianity also did an overlay with the trick-or-treating. They called it souling. You would go souling, where you would go instead of going to steal the treats that were left out for the ancestors, you would go and offer prayers to a family and to their ancestors for their salvation, right? In exchange for a soul cake, which was like a biscuit of some kind. And so again, they're sort of taking existing traditions and kind of overlaying a new meaning, in the hopes that when they have everybody under this one umbrella of Christianity, it will be much easier to herd the masses, right? So that was the Christian overlay. And then it didn't, like I said, those pesky pagans, they just really held on to their traditions. And in the New World, a lot of this mischief was still bubbling up through the surface of Christianity. And in fact, there was an event in 1919 in Anoka, Minnesota, where an outhouse was overturned while somebody was in it. It was an occupied outhouse. So these are the mischievous youths, right? It was often the boys that were getting into trouble.
Of course, testosterone has its way.
Of course. So there was an occupied outhouse that was overturned. They placed a horseless carriage on top of a schoolhouse roof. They let out a bunch of cows that one ended up wandering into the city jail, and another ended up locked in a classroom and ate some algebra books and some history books. And so the town was not all too pleased with this, right? And these sorts of shenanigans were happening all over the United States.
Probably made for some smart cow shit.
So civic groups and groups like the Freemasons, the Oddfellows, and the Elks got together and sort of curated a more domesticated. They wanted to tame and sanitize the holiday. So they flipped it to make it more about children. This was a common tactic. They did the same thing with Christmas. They made it more about children. Oh, the cute little kids dressing up and going door to door. They created little carnivals that would all be for the children and family friendly. And they handed out sweets, free of charge. And it worked. It tamed the holiday, and the teenagers ended up, staying home. The young boys ended up staying home, passing out candy, with their parents, and not overturning outhouses and such. So then you have the commercial opportunity, the candy companies that hop on board, and that's a natural alliance between the upper classes that want to domesticate the rowdiness, and there's that 4-layer cake, and here we are. So what I do during Halloween, like I said, we still enjoy the costumes. We've had a blast, but I also, my daughter and I create an altar for we call them our dead people every year. And
that's a good idea.
Yeah. So we just bring in, we don't stop everything else. I mean, she's not interested in the candy, and we used to do the switch witch thing where I'd get her something else that she wanted instead of all the candy. In fact, it cracked me up one year because we were trick-or-treating and her bag was getting heavy because she just had joy, running around, playing her song for people that, I think that year she was Willie Nelson, and with her little pink ukulele. and her bag was getting heavy. I think it's the first time this maybe has ever happened in history. She saw one of those houses out where they just leave the bowl out and they say, please take one. And she went and emptied her trick-or-treating bag so that it wouldn't be so heavy. So into their bowl. So it wouldn't be so heavy, but she could keep having fun, getting attention for her costume and the creativity and everything else. So, but we create an altar to our dead people. We put up pictures of all of my grandparents and any photo that I have of relatives or ancestors or loved ones who've passed. And then we put out their favorite foods or, like my grandfather's harmonica, their favorite items. And what's so beautiful about this is two things. Is one, we're broaching the topic of death in a way that's grounded and loving and safe. And it's not these hellish images of gore and terror that, or the horror movie trend that got popular during Halloween. And this really twisted, very satanic, really unhealthy take on death. Right. And so we're bringing it back to these are our loved ones and we're still connected to them and they're still connected to us. And there's a much more healthy conversation that happens around death. It's not taboo. It's not something that we awkwardly avoid. We talk about it every year at Halloween during the fall season when nature is decaying all around us. And then additionally, I inevitably end up telling her stories about her ancestors that may or may not ever arise in conversation between us if we didn't have this little ritual. So it really brings some of that meaning back in to the holiday for us.
Yeah, I just realized when you started describing the altar for the relatives that have passed, Angie does that. And it just, I'm not really very holiday driven myself. I have my own holiday every morning when I do my spiritual practices. So to me, it's like I try to live that way so that I don't have to have a holiday to where I say, oh, it's time to thank God. It's just like constant for me. But Angie definitely does that. And she gets out pictures of, grandma, great grandma, anybody in the family that's died that she has. And she takes the kids and they do like a little candle prayer connection to them and talk to them, which is cool. I had just totally brain farted on the fact that she does do that with the kids.
Yeah.
Then a couple
great.
things.
Beautiful.
Angie and Penny are both very, very into holidays and everything. And it's great for the kids. Another thing, I studied Osho for many years because as wild and crazy as he was, he dropped a lot of great wisdom, but he has one or two lectures where he goes on about who the Christian saints really are and makes it very, very clear that most of the people we call saints were really the people that did the best job of selling the corporate Christianity to people and were rewarded like you get an award at a corporation for being the best salesman or something. But in my study of the saints, which has been quite extensive, what I want to share with the audience is you can always tell who the real saints are because the church tried to kill them or did kill them and only later realized that they were actually, men or women of God, and it usually took 300 or 400 years before they finally got, acknowledged as a saint. But almost all the real saints they went after and tried to kill. For example, Saint Hildegard of Bingen, they tried to get rid of her, but she became so powerful. They realized that if they did kill her, that it might end up wiping the church out because she had so many followers, they could literally take the church over. And it's very interesting. Saint Bernard was another Christian saint who they tried to kill, and his teachings were profound. On and on it goes. But the other thing is, when I was young, I remember what you're telling me about Halloween makes me wonder if this is where this came from. But one of the things that a lot of my buddies used to do, I never actually did it although it was really funny. You probably have heard of it before. But they would take a paper bag and fill it full of, dog shit or cow shit, and then put it on somebody's doorstep, light it on fire, and ring the doorbell.
Yeah,
and
precisely.
People would run out the door and start stamping it out and get shit all over themselves in their front yard or front porch. But that sounds like a holiday, a Halloween prank, doesn't it?
Yes, it sure does. Yeah, grandchild of the Halloween, Samhain pranking mischief. Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting though. So the young men tended to be out, pulling all these pranks, and in the earlier days of Halloween in the colonies, the women, the culture that became popular with the women was to stay home and do divining, all kinds of divining. So there were all sorts of rituals that were typically they involved divining about future loves or marriage or that sort of thing. But that was what the women were up to during that time.
Yeah. Well, that was really fun. I feel more educated on Halloween. I'll have to quiz Angie and Penny on these things, see how much they know about this.
Yeah.
and the 4 levels of overlay don't surprise me at all. And I'm sure we're going to get even more of an education on how the devil's favorite place to hide is in the church to this very moment.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. This is Penny, interrupting Paul's podcast with an important announcement. If you've been listening to Paul's podcast regularly, you'll already know how much your gut affects everything, from your mood to your energy to your overall vitality. So here's something I'm genuinely excited to share. The Chek Institute is offering the Gut Health Reset, a free online mini course designed to help you finally get your digestion and your life back on track. Yep, it's completely free and there's no catch. This course gives you the tools to understand what your gut's been trying to tell you. You'll learn how to identify the root causes of bloating, fatigue, and brain fog, and how to start supporting your microbiome naturally. It's packed with Paul's tried and true wisdom and the Chek Institute's holistic approach, the same philosophy that's transformed thousands of lives. Think of it as a short, powerful reset to reconnect you with your body before the new year hits. So if you're ready to finish this year strong and start 2026 feeling clear, energized, and balanced, grab your free access now. Just head to paul.chekinstitute.com/spirit gym. Again, that's paul.chekinstitute.com/spirit gym and start your gut health reset today. Your gut, and honestly, your whole body, will thank you.
So take us into Thanksgiving.
Yeah. So Thanksgiving is a little bit different in that, we do have, harvest festivals naturally happening again, in all kinds of different cultures that are more in tune with nature. But what really happened with Thanksgiving is that there was one woman. This is fascinating to me. This woman actually, she gives me hope that I can shift, that I can create a whole new global tradition of the sacred nights, the 13 sacred nights, because that's precisely what this woman did with Thanksgiving. She was just passionate about having a national Thanksgiving Day. And days of Thanksgiving were originally, they were days of religious observation. They were days to be grateful to God, and it was a Puritan Protestant thing because, of course, they had rejected all of the celebrations of the Catholic tradition and all of the other holidays, saying, "Oh no, these are rebranded pagan celebrations," which they weren't wrong about, and so they said, we don't want to celebrate any of that. And so just Sundays is enough, in addition to these days of Thanksgiving, which were not established at any particular time in the year. They just were declared whenever something within the community merited thanks. And then they would either have a feast day, a day of feasting to give thanks for whatever positive thing had happened, or if there was something challenging or that was, that was happening within the community, then they would have what's the opposite of feasting? Help me out. A fasting day. A fasting day. Yeah, they would have a fasting day. So Sarah Josepha Hale was a writer and an editor. She edited a very popular magazine, probably the most popular in its day, called Godey's Lady Book, which I always think is a funny title for a magazine. But she petitioned all the governors and 6 different presidents for, I think, 17 years. She was just hell-bent on getting a national day of Thanksgiving established, and she thought it would help with national, morale and, the just to bring people back to God and worship and these sorts of things. And what ended up happening was that Lincoln finally, in 1863, declared her National Day of Thanksgiving. But it was really a very strategic thing that he did, because it was during the Civil War, or at the tail end of the Civil War, and it was an attempt to create unity and national pride. And so originally it was just a day of giving thanks to God. It was a religious observance, really. And so he declared that, and finally Sarah Josepha Hale had her National Day of Thanksgiving. It wasn't yet still quite firmly planted on a particular day. That sort of happened organically over the next couple of presidents. But what's interesting, this is what I find interesting about Thanksgiving, is that the whole tale of the pilgrims with the buckles on their hats and their shoes, and the Indians with the one feather sticking up behind, and we're all so familiar with it because we learned it in elementary school. That story was not originally associated with Thanksgiving. That story is the whole thing is based on one very short paragraph from Edward Winslow. And it was written in 1621 and then lost for 200 years, resurfaced in the 1800s, and was then really just chosen to create sort of this feel-good national origin story that we could all get behind and we could all feel good about. And again, the whole intention was to create national unity and pride. And so the details that are unfolding in schools year after year after year, and it was really introduced into the school system intentionally to create this national myth, right? It's just completely inaccurate. And if you read the original paragraph, first of all, buckles and on the hats and the shoes, that would not have at all been a thing, because that would have been jewelry that they didn't have access to, at the time. And the headdress, that's not what the local tribe in question, with that one short paragraph, that was not their garb, so that's all just completely fabricated. And it does say that there were natives present, and they had a lot of food, and they were thankful for their first harvest. But it doesn't say if the natives were invited, or if it was a friendly interaction, or if they just showed up. Maybe there was tension. Like, we have no idea. And so this little lost paragraph that was lost for 200 years and then resurfaced in the 1800s was used to creatively imagine this feel-good story that would help, unite the country. So that's really the story of where Thanksgiving came from. Over the years, then you have the commercialism that came in, and what you had mentioned about it being a day off of work, right, in the middle of the week, which was rare at the time for folks. Then football, basically, organizations just started opportunistically saying, oh, this would be a good time to have a game, because then we'll have a bigger audience because folks are off of work, and
sell more alcohol,
sell more sugar. So, the whole commercial layer got added on top. I do feel out of all the holidays, like Thanksgiving has, for lack of a better word, has been like the least bastardized. It's just, at least we still recognize that this is a day for giving thanks. People still associate Thanksgiving with the word gratitude, and maybe even discuss what are you grateful for at the Thanksgiving table. So that's a bit about where Thanksgiving came from.
Well, it's interesting. I love it. I love the idea of giving thanks. I think it's important for all of us. I think a lot of people are quite detached from the spiritual value of giving thanks on many, many levels. I mean, if you look at just the mystery and the magic of how nature produces food for us and how plants grow and just all the amazing mysteries of things that are so taken for granted. I rarely see people giving thanks for their food before they eat it. It's amazing to me. In my work with patients and many of my students and in my Spirit Gym program, I teach various practices for opening the heart. And it's very, very common for me with patients and students and Spirit Gym practitioners to have people say, I can't open my heart. I don't know how to do that. And that's often coupled with trauma of a variety of types where there's wounds in the heart. And so I was meditating and connecting to my soul and just saying, what is a simple, effective way that I could teach people to open their heart that are having a hard time opening their heart? And my soul gave me a very amazing practice, and I'd like to invite you to do it with me right now because it's very easy. And all of you listening, just put your non-dominant hand, which is your feminine hand, over your heart and pay close attention to what happens in your heart when you do this. Think of the people, the places, the things, and the times in your life that you're really grateful for, and just simply say, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
And when you say the words thank you with the intention of really giving thanks, pay attention to what's happening to your heart. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, God.
Thank you.
Thank you, Great Spirit. Thank you, Mother Nature. Thank you, spirits of the water, spirits of the earth, spirits of the fire, the sun, the stars. Thank you, spirits of the air, for our beautiful breath, the energy of life. Thank you to all of you whose love touches me without me knowing where it came from. Thank you for all of those that love me and share love with me, and I do know where it came from. May my love reach you. Thank you. And I found that is the fastest way anyone can open their heart, is just find anything that they're genuinely thankful for. And then when you say the words with intention, the heart chakra just opens. Could you feel that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Isn't that simple and wild?
It's beautiful. It's that when you drop in, right? It's the warmth and the opening, the softness. Yeah.
And that's Thanksgiving.
That's Thanksgiving. Right. So, again, to come back to this idea of, can we do it a little more consciously?
Yeah.
Maybe we, focus less on the store-bought, pies, and just lean in a little bit more. We're not so bad with Thanksgiving, but could we lean in a little bit more to this theme of gratitude? Yeah.
And have Thanksgiving with every meal, and with every great opportunity, with every hug, with every gesture from a friend that is supportive, or there's a million ways for Thanksgiving to be alive in our lives every day.
Yeah. And then next level, which I'm being pushed to do in my life right now, is to give thanks for even the stuff that feels absolutely awful.
Well, yeah. And I mean, if you look, for example, at the pandemic, COVID, there's more people now that are awake to their health and to their food choices and the trickery of the medical system, the government. I mean, the devil has to always point us to the good, unfortunately. Yeah. And when people get too complacent, then the unconscious manifests itself, so we can all look at what we're creating unconsciously. And I think that, a great example of how challenges can turn out to be the greatest things of our lives. In many of my classes, I say to my students, which teachers taught you the most? The ones that were often challenging, grumpy, strict, the ones that were sometimes hard to get along with, or the ones that you just thought were the nicest and the sweetest? And when most people think about it, they almost always unanimously agree it was the ones that challenged me the most, that I often thought I didn't like, but they were actually the ones that made damn sure I learned something, you know? And so, you know, the old saying, God works in mysterious ways. And I think part of being an adult is really opening yourself to the mystery and knowing ultimately that if God is love, then no matter what's unfolding is there to help us learn to love better, which is to live better.
Yeah.
So, you know, I appreciate what you're saying, and thank you for bringing that up, because it is very, very important. And it takes a fair bit of maturation, I think, as an adult to accumulate enough wisdom to, you know, as Jung would say, hold the tension of the opposites. Don't seek to medicate yourself so quickly, or, you know, find somebody else to solve your problems for you. The alchemists call that sitting in the fire or burning, and cooking. They call it cooking. You're supposed to sit and cook in it, which is, you know, look at the issue, but don't make reactive, ready, fire, aim type reactions to things, or you just end up causing more pain and more problems for yourself. So these are all very important, deeper insights to these holidays.
I'm definitely cooking in the fires of my life right now. Not to get too personal, but you know, it's heating up at the moment.
It's part of it, isn't it? It's just always part of it. But you know, knowing you as little, but as well as I do from connection to you, I know that whatever Lara is cooking in is going to turn out to be something sweeter than it was. So I would just say, you know, keep making the stew. When it's time to eat, I'm sure it'll turn out to be fantastic.
You know, it's just a whole nother level of surrender. I think when you get to a place where, you know, I think so often we're trying to wrangle life into, you know, to look the way that we want it to look. Mm-hmm. And when events unfold in such a way that you're on your knees and you can't wrangle it anymore, there's no other choice other than to complete surrender. You know, like, okay, this is out of my hands and this is in God's hands. Yeah. And there's no other option at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so those moments do come.
It's profound.
Yeah. And they certainly have a effect of making the ego a lot more porous to spirit.
Yes, it's true. I've got just really intense stuff going on at home, and I had, you know, clients lined up, and I thought, gosh, maybe I should cancel some of these clients. And then I thought, you know, man, I am closer to God right now than I think I've ever been. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, I didn't cancel my clients, and I had some really, probably some of the most profound sessions that I've ever had with clients recently.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Let's just not make a habit of getting there that way.
Let's not.
You know, we live in a world where stress is constant and distractions are endless. If you're like many of my clients juggling family, career, training, and spiritual practice, you've probably felt the toll it takes on your clarity and vitality. You may even be someone that can't get through the day without drinking coffee, even when it's not making you feel better anymore. That's why I'm excited to share something that's become part of my daily ritual, Nandaka by Peak. Nandaka means the sword of wisdom. It isn't your typical energy booster or coffee substitute. Nandaka is a sacred blend of organically grown adaptogenic and nootropic botanicals designed not to mask your fatigue, but to nourish your nervous system, feed your brain, and support deep, sustainable energy from the inside out. That's what true vitality is all about. Unlike most mushroom products that are stuffed with mycelium grown on grain, Nandaka is made from 100% fruiting bodies. That's where the medicine lives. You get the full spectrum of benefits of lion mane for mental clarity and nerve regeneration, reishi and chaga for modulating stress and inflammation, and ceremonial cacao rich in anandamide, the bliss molecule, to uplift your mood and calm your system. Even the cacao butter serves a higher purpose, acting as a delivery mechanism to carry these nutrients deep into your brain. When I take Nandaka before podcasting, teaching, writing, or conducting a therapy session, I notice something profound. The energy is steady, the focus is clean, and my creativity flows without resistance. It supports the body, the mind, and the soul all at once. And here's the truth. If your brain and nervous system are overstimulated and undernourished, you'll always be inviting burnout. That's why I don't treat the symptoms. I go to the source. And Nandaka aligns with that philosophy. I'm truly impressed with Nandaka, and that's why I'm excited to share this powerful, effective support and nourishment to help you stay vital throughout each day, to bring you many of the core nutrients most everybody's brain, nervous system, and body needs today. Currently, there are over 18,000 five-star reviews on Peak's amazing products, and Nandaka is trusted by some of the top minds in wellness for a reason, including me. These products actually work. Tune in, reconnect, nourish your core. Try Nandaka and feel the shift. Nandaka is a powerful ally, and right now you can get 20% off for life, plus a free starter kit with your first order and a rechargeable frother and helpful glass beaker for mixing your Nandaka exclusively at peaklife.com/Paul Chek. Once again, that's PIQUELIFE.com/PAULCHEK. peaklife.com/Paul Chek for 20% off for life plus a free starter kit with your first order.
Okay, back to the holidays. Where are we at? We just
Christmas.
did Christmas. Okay, this is the deepest dive for me, and I'll try to keep it short because I've got so many details. But and we did speak about this, I think, in our previous podcast. But Christmas around the world was the solstice time, right? And this is what I'm teaching with the 13 sacred nights. And this is the time when the darkness was at its peak, and we have the rebirth of the light after the winter solstice. And so this is a time when cultures, on every single continent, celebrated themes of the resurrection of life and the rebirth of life, and the evergreens celebrating the life conquering death, and all of these such things, the sun conquering the darkness, and so that was the original sort of pagan layer. And then we have the Christian overlay, aligning the birth of Christ. And all Christians would agree they don't actually know when Christ was born.
No, I've studied numerous courses on Christianity by scholars of comparative religion, scholars of Christianity. Luke Timothy Johnson, I believe, is one of his names, Bart D. Ehrman. Because this is such an issue in people's lives, and all the confusion of dogmatic interpretation of religious scriptures, and it leads to just chaos in people's lives. But of the many scholars I've studied that have looked into this, they say nobody knows for sure what day Jesus is born, but we do know for sure it wasn't Christmas Day.
Yes, correct. However, that was the birth date of Sol Invictus, which was the sun god, the unconquerable sun god of ancient Rome, and Mithras was also sort of overlaid on top of Sol Invictus, and so again they sort of took the pagan festivities or rituals and sort of created this new overlay, this new meaning of the birth of Christ, and so fast forward now, that we could go down that rabbit hole for a whole 3 podcasts, but I'm going to fast forward to the colonies in the early days, and what was happening. Remember, it's the Puritans, right? Who they didn't even believe in celebrating the birth of Christ. They focused more on Easter and the resurrection because that was a known date, and so Christmas was actually outlawed in the holiday in the colonies in the early days. From 1659 to 1681 in Massachusetts, you could get a 5-shilling fine if you were found celebrating Christmas. However, Christmas, what we think of as Christmas, did not look anything like what we, experience today, what we know today as Christmas.
Well, before you go on, why was it outlawed?
Why was it? Well, I'm about to tell you. Because Christmas looked much more like Saturnalia in ancient Rome. And so Saturnalia was their midwinter festival. Again, remember, all these cultures in their own ways are marking the return of the light and the peak of darkness and the triumph of light over darkness and life over death. And so this was a period in ancient Rome of complete societal upheaval. It was a time of inversion. It was role reversal. It was slaves being served by slave masters and children bossing parents around, and a fool was crowned king. And there was cross-dressing, and there was gambling, and there was lots of alcohol and promiscuity in the streets. And it was this like society-wide release valve.
There's still places that celebrate that.
Carnival, right? And so it was very carnival-esque. And so the thing is that the whole society participated. The elites, the upper classes willingly, played their part in this role reversal and this inversion. And it was kind of like, okay, if we play along for this little midwinter festival, then, the rest of the year, everything will go back to order and will be served well for the remainder of the year. And it almost like kept the social hierarchy in place. So again, fast forward to the colonies, and you've got the tension, of the Puritans not wanting to have anything to do with it. But then what eventually happened as well was that the elites started pulling away, and they no longer wanted to play their part. So they would have groups of rowdy youths showing up at their door to perform their plays, which they called mumming, or to sing their songs, which they called wassailing. Here we go, we're wassailing. And they would expect to be given food or alcohol or money even in return for their songs and their plays, their masked plays. Well, the elites weren't having it. And so they started closing their doors and saying, no, we're not going to give you the cider that we have in the basement. Think about some of our Christmas carols. We won't, we want some figgy pudding. We won't go until we get some. We won't go until we get some. These are old Saturnalian like rituals. And so, so that very quickly escalated into violence and vandalism. And you had loud, violent, parades in the streets. And essentially a very small group of New York elites got together and they dreamt up a new holiday tradition that was much more tame, domesticated, that would be held within the walls of the parlor. There would be no more exchange happening between the classes. It was between the parents and the children instead. And they created the imagery of Santa Claus. They cherry picked from old world myths and traditions in order for the masses to feel like they were romantically plugged into their past. However, it was a completely fabricated new holiday. In fact, they said, the house of ale will not be vanquished by the house of God. So we're going to create a new deity. And that was Santa Claus. So there was John Pintard was sort of the first one to kick off this campaign. He was a Freemason and a historian. And then you had Clement Clark Moore, who in 1823 wrote the poem that we all know, The Night Before Christmas. And he introduced Santa Claus, St. Nicholas, as a right jolly old elf with a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. So most of us don't pay attention to the wording there, but their initial, as they were dreaming up this family-friendly, domesticated within the walls of the parlor holiday, Santa Claus was originally a little tiny elf with 8 tiny reindeer. And, and then they sort of continued to grow and the imagery around this new holiday. And Thomas Nast got involved, who was a political cartoonist, and he really fluffed out the imagery of Santa Claus, grew him to, life size. And again, some of their ideas, a lot of their inspiration was coming from the old world, which is why I think we get confused, because we think, Santa Claus came from the Dutch Saint Nick, and we think it was just this organic happening where the Dutch Saint Nicholas hitched a ride on the Mayflower and came over with the Dutch settlers, but that's not at all the case. It was this process of this small group of intellectual elites using old world traditions as inspiration in order to completely fabricate a more tame holiday. And so so that is where much of our current, what we think of as Christmas, that's where it comes from. When Christmas was outlawed, back in 1659, it's because Christmas was debauchery, gambling, cross-dressing, parades in the streets, and that sort of behavior. It looked nothing like what we think of as Christmas today. The early days of Santa Claus and Saint Nicholas, he sometimes had royal blue. He sometimes wore royal blue or sometimes green robes. Thomas Nast was the one who eventually solidified the red color. The god Odin of the Germanic tribes and Germanic cultures, he had an 8-legged horse, Sleipnir, that he used to ride across the sky at the solstice time in something called the Great Hunt. And so there are multiple myths, and how do we know how much they influenced each other? Like I said, where we can even reading 31 books, it's like it's still kind of this tangled, muddy history. And I don't think there's a direct line. I think it was much more this process of different pagan stories that influenced the creation of this sanitized holiday that these New York elites created in the 1800s. Yeah.
I personally, I have zero interest in the Christian conception of Christmas, just because I do a lot of research into these things and I talk to my soul and ask the very questions I need to ask. So I'm not just being mythed.
Yeah.
And just being a sheep, which I could go on about that forever. But the thing I do love about Christmas is it is just a lovely chance to, give something to somebody that you love, have the kids love it. I think, I realize it's a huge commercial adventure. I mean, a commercial enterprise really is the right word. But I really do think that the act of just giving and spending some time together and having a celebration, and even when my parents were really broke, they always managed to get us a couple of gifts or something that made us all excited. And my parents, when I was a kid, they would put sheets over the doorways so you couldn't see into the living room. And, late at night, they would sneak all the presents in. So we thought Santa brought it in, and me and my brother were too smart for that. So we'd be out at 2:00 in the morning, freezing our asses off in 4, 5, 6 feet of snow, peeking through the living room window.
Yeah, catching your parents in the act.
Seeing who Santa Claus really was. And it was all, I remember when we first figured it out, we're like, we knew something was going on. I mean, we're probably, I don't know, I guess I was 12, I think. He was 11. And we figured it out, but we didn't want them to know we'd figured it out because we didn't want them. We were worried if we told them we knew that maybe they'd think, well, there's no point in having Christmas anymore.
Yeah, right. No, you don't want to blow that one.
No.
I recently wrote an article about this whole thing about Santa Claus that we do that should be released in Elephant Journal soon. I'll send it to you when it comes out. But it's an interesting topic, right? This the whole idea that we lie to our children about this, magical being. And then, some years when they get to be however old the age is, we have to break the myth, break the magic, break this, the story, and tell them, oh no, it was made up the whole time. We were tricking you. And I myself remember that moment when my older brother told me that Santa Claus wasn't real. And I've talked to lots of other people about this. And there's a very common experience that is not a positive one of feeling like, I'll just speak for myself. I remember feeling like really icky inside as a little girl, because I felt like I had been the butt of everyone's joke. Like my brother was in on it, my mom and dad were in on it, and like almost like were they making fun of me or making fun at my expense, you know? And it felt like this. It just felt terrible, a betrayal. You know, it felt like a betrayal, and so in the article that I just wrote, I talk about that. And, you know, if again, going back to people get so defensive, I'm sure I'm going to get some blowback about that Santa Claus article. But if we know
only from the children and adult bodies,
if we know that Santa Claus was in fact fabricated and spoon fed to us to keep us from, you know, interacting with, to keep us, you know, the working classes from interacting with the upper classes, you know, maybe we might go, is this, well, how does this feel to our children? Do we, and maybe people do, maybe they want to continue the tradition of Santa Claus. I don't know. I'm not trying to dictate that, but I am saying, let's pause and think about what we're actually doing. You know, what is at this point, what is Santa Claus promoting? Well, it's commercialism.
viruses,
it's piles and piles and piles of presents, you know, and like, yes, the revolving door of shopping, sugar and alcohol, you know, the sugar for, you can think about every holiday. There's a candy for each holiday, right? We all know what they are. It's candy corns for Halloween, and, you know, candy canes, and, you know, sugar cookies, you know, we know them all. So, so that's where the sacred nights comes in to the Christmas holidays, because, you know, so we had our 4-layer cake, we had the pagan solstice rituals, and then we had the overlay of Christianity, and then we have the domestication in the 1800s, and then we've got the commercialism that you know, hitched a ride on the Victorian values and then just blew out of control. I think we can all agree that Christmas is the most out of control of all the commercialized holidays. But to go back to the theme of the rebirthing of the light, right, is what the sacred nights practice turns our attention back to. And as above, so below, as without, so within, as the light is returning on the horizon. This is what's happening in our environment, in nature. This is what's, you know, happening externally. The light is returning on the horizon. It's beginning to stream back in. The same thing is happening internally in the human soul and psyche, right? There's a new inspiration that is born for the coming cycle of seasons. And this is our opportunity to become, you know, conscious co-creators in the tending to that spark and that flame that will then, you know, sprout in the spring, bloom, and fully expand in the summertime. We're living the dream that we planted in the fertile soil of the darkness. And then in the fall, we're enjoying the fruits of our labor. We're perhaps reflecting on the year gone by, deciding what we want to throw on the compost pile, what we want to keep for another cycle of seasons before diving back in to the womb of winter. And in the darkness of that womb, that's where we're most able to recognize the light. Right. You know, if you light a match in the full daylight, it's hard to see the light. But if you light a match in the darkness, that's where you can really witness the light. And so, so to me, those are the themes that the practice of the 13 sacred nights can bring back into our Christmas winter holiday season. And, you know, keep what you love. We still have a Christmas tree. My daughter loves our collection of ornaments. Some of them passed down from my grandmother, you know, but she's done the Holy Nights or Sacred Nights practice from the very beginning, because I learned it the year she was born. And that other stuff, all the commercialism, the shopping, the presents, the tree, it's still there, but it's kind of in the background. And when the season of darkness approaches, my daughter and I are looking forward to getting our Sacred Nights journals. We're looking forward to the rest, the rejuvenation, the reset, the opportunity to consciously really dive into what do we want for the coming cycle? You know, this opportunity to consciously step into that, the rhythm of the seasons and how they support the cycle of co-creation.
Yeah, it's great. I think we can always turn a negative into a positive. You know, there's a lot of, it's great to know what's really going on, so we can actually be conscious about what it is that we can use the holiday for. And I think what a great opportunity to say, hey, okay, now that I know all the bullshit attached to any one of these holidays, I'm going to consciously recreate my own holiday. And
Yes.
since everybody's, since we're going to get a day off of work or 2 days or whatever, let me use it for something that means something to me or to my family. And I think there's a lot of beauty in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. My family and I love Organifi's green juices. You can get your green juice in 2 excellent flavors, crisp apple and original mint. Not only are these products made with certified organic ingredients to support your family's nutritional needs, they each have some unique benefits. Your green juice crisp apple eases stress with an effective dose of 600 milligrams of ashwagandha per serving. Helps reduce cortisol spikes that increase snacking urges and aids keeping your blood sugar balanced. Why snack on inferior foods that lack nutrition and often lead to blood sugar spikes followed by blood sugar crashes when Organifi's green juices are super healthy, taste great, and are as quick to make as opening the package and adding water. Your green juice crisp apple is made from fresh apples picked right off the branch and are packed with micronutrients to support your body's needs. Green Juice Original Mint contains ashwagandha, chlorella, and spirulina. Reset your body every morning with 11 detoxifying superfoods. You'll love the delicious taste and your body will feel strong and stable with all the micronutrients in each serving. Green Juice Original Mint promotes balanced cortisol and stress levels, perfect for weight management, and helps rid the body of harmful toxins. Personally, I'm super grateful that Organifi makes such excellent, easy-to-use drinks and foods that keep us energized, healthy, and clean inside while decreasing the urge to crave on inferior snack foods. My kids love both flavors, and I love knowing that we can all be healthy together with Organifi's excellent crisp apple and original mint green juices. These products are excellent for work, on the road, sharing with friends, and anytime you need a nutritious boost that tastes good. To get your crisp apple and original mint green juices, go to organifi.com/Chek20. That's organifi.com/Chek20. Save 20% on your purchase using the code Chek20, all caps, on checkout. Don't worry if you forget your Living 4D discount code because you'll see it right there on the landing page. Enjoy Organifi's excellent green juices. It's been super informative. I was just saying to you on our little break how excited I am to have had you reached out to me with this idea because I love it. And I always love the mysteries of all these things. And it's just been such an amazing ride so far. So I'm really curious about Valentine's Day. That's another big one.
Yep.
Fortunately, there's still some love and beauty connected to Valentine's Day. So I'm curious to hear the real backstory on that and the things you got to share. So take us into Valentine's Day.
Yeah. So Valentine's Day is interesting. And yes, we think it's about love, but man, it's also just heavily hyper commercialized, right?
Of course. Think of all the cards that get sold.
Oh, the cards, the kids
Flowers.
that take a box of cards for all their 30 students and the little chalky, the candies, the little hearts that taste like chalk. I don't know how those ever got so popular.
Yeah.
Yeah. Flowers, jewelry, dinner, chocolates, So
hopefully some sex at the end of it all.
Hopefully, but hyper commercialized, right?
Yeah.
And also just strictly focused on romantic love. My
Right.
thought I'll jump to the end before I give the history. My thought on Valentine's Day is, can we lean into the theme of love in a much greater application?
Yeah, I think that's lost.
Yeah, it's absolutely lost. And I know in our first podcast, I talked about my experience where I had a conversation with one of my dearest friends who had passed away the morning after he died. And that was one of the most mystical and profound experiences I've had in my life to date. And his message for me, because I had that knee-jerk moment where I said to him, how could I have loved you better? Because he was schizophrenic and had this horrendous roller coaster ride of a life. And I said, how could I have been a better friend? How could I have loved you better, Josh? And his immediate reflection back to me was, you loved me perfectly, but apply that question to your life right now. And that was so simple and so profound and so beautiful. And I immediately started going through the people in my life. You know, how can I love my brother better? How can I love my mom better? How can I love my husband better? And sometimes the answers aren't always easy. And
Don't forget about Lara.
yeah. Well, I know. You know what? It's true that it took a reflection from a good friend the week after it happened to say, "Did you ask yourself the same question?" And
Yes.
of course, I sheepishly had to admit that I had not. So, you know, yes. How can we love ourselves better? So, gosh, I would love for that theme to really be conscious and present and aware with us on Valentine's Day. Maybe it's not just about jewelry for your loved one. Can we just think about how we can love better? Because ultimately, if you read near-death experience books and, you know, have checked out what people experience when they die and what they say when they come back, across the board, they all say this is about love.
Yeah.
This is about learning to love this, you know, being here. So okay, so that was jumping to the end before the beginning. Where did Valentine's Day come from? Valentine's Day was February 14th was originally the day that a festival called Lupercalia was celebrated in ancient Rome, and that was a ancient fertility festival. And it was a time when they sacrificed goats, and from the goat hide, young men had strips of goat hide that they would go running around, barely dressed, maybe in a loincloth, and whipping women with these strips of goat hide. And it was said that if you were to receive the whipping, that it would increase your fertility. So women willingly allowed themselves to be whipped. So it was this, you know, really body and, you know, by Victorian standards, really, you know, inappropriate behavior.
Well, that's what you got to do when you're playing games with God and sex and all that.
Yes. So this pagan festival, but Lupercalia aside, I mean, that was and again, that was on February 14th, but there were many, many festivals in the late winter, early spring season that were fertility festivals. And there was promiscuity. There was often, again, divining that had to do with partners. Sometimes there were lottery systems where that you would be paired through a lottery system with a sexual partner and mate, you know, throughout the period of the festival, or maybe the remainder of the year. So all kinds of very, you know, sexually promiscuous rites and celebrations were happening during the spring season in these pagan cultures.
Helps to explain the term "get lucky," doesn't it?
Yeah. So,
if somebody's doing a lottery to see who you're going to have wild sex with, you hope to get lucky.
You do. Yes, you do hope to get lucky. So Lupercalia was outlawed, no surprise, in 490 in the year 496 by Pope Gelasius.
Of course. Name. Not to mention the fact that they still do that in their private quarters in the Vatican.
Yeah, not to mention. So that was the first, you know, the Christian outlawing of a lot of these behaviors and festivals, and then the overlay was the Saints' Day, which was Saint Valentine. Now, originally, this Saint Valentine's Day on February 14th had nothing to do with romance. Absolutely nothing. He was just an obscure saint, like we'd already talked about, many of these saints that were martyred in the early days of Christianity. And it wasn't until, I think, the 1300s when Chaucer wrote a poem that was speaking to the mating behavior of the birds in the springtime. So again, we're bringing in the seasonal observations, and Chaucer was doing so in poetry. And he happened to mention in one line, probably because it rhymed or it sounded good or something, you know, on this Saint Valentine's Day. And then a couple of other poets at the same time kind of caught on to that trend and, you know, equated Saint Valentine's Day with mating and themes of romance, and that sort of, you know, carried it into the popular culture. But to back up a little bit, we now have all these apocryphal myths, meaning that they aren't actually historically accurate, but they were added later on in order to give the holiday, to make sense of it, for it to have some kind of meaning to help it make sense, because it's become this romantic holiday. It's celebrated in the very early spring, mating season. And yet the Christian overlay, again, originally had nothing to do with romance. And so a couple of the apocryphal myths that you'll hear if you look into Valentine's Day, where did it come from? You might come across the story that Saint Valentine was he was a priest who was willing to marry couples when an emperor, Claudius, had outlawed marriage because single men made better warriors, and he needed a lot of soldiers to go to war. And so he outlawed marriage. And so this Saint Valentine was willing, behind closed doors and in secret, to marry couples. And he was then later jailed for his actions. And then he fell in love with the jailer's daughter. And he wrote her this love letter signed "Your Valentine." Love, your
Nice.
Valentine.
Mhm.
Well, that's a nice story. And gee, wouldn't it be great if that were true? But it's just absolutely fabricated and false. And the truth is that the Roman Catholic Church recognizes at least a dozen Saint Valentines, because the name Valentinus was in fact a very, very common name at that time. And so there are literally 10 or 12 Saint Valentines, and we know virtually nothing about any of them. And the same goes for, the Saint Valentine that February 14th was given his Saints Day to align with the 14th. But these are some of the, there's so many. It's just like Christmas. Like we have these myths that have been handed down to us, and we sort of assume that they're true. But if you do just a little bit of digging, you'll find out, that they really come from a whole lot of thin air. And so again, we have, the original, very sexual and promiscuous pagan fertility rites and festivals, including Lupercalia. And then we have this Christian overlay of Saint Valentine, and then the attempt to make it make sense. Let's make it make sense, and we'll fabricate this story about how this saint was jailed for marrying people, and then he fell. And the whole story, just retroactively justifies the holiday, and then you have the overlay of the Victorian values and the letter writing and the love letter writing, which actually began with the elites. It was a custom that began in the upper classes of sending poetry and love letters to those that you were attempting to court. And then with the commercialization and the industrialization, the printing press, and when that all came into the picture, suddenly that practice became much more widely available to the masses. And Valentine's Day was really the first holiday where the holiday card culture caught on. And it started with this Valentine exchange. And there were all different versions of that where, originally it was handwritten. And then there became commercial Valentines that you could buy. And then there were books of love poems that you could buy to sort of, you could buy a whole book of love sonnets and poetry that you could then write your own, but steal it from the book. And then there was some point in time where there was even, there was a point in time where originally when Valentines were sent, it was a true request to court someone. And so you would expect a response. Whereas today you send a Valentine, you don't expect a response. It's not necessarily actually a true request to court someone. You give 30 Valentines out to all your classmates in elementary school. But it was originally an actual courting. And so then there came to be this tradition. I thought this was hysterical for a time of nasty responses that were actually sometimes quite cruel in nature. And so you could send either, a positive response, or you could send a poem just saying, something, some kind of rejection of sorts.
So that's where social media really began.
Yeah, exactly. So there's some funny things about the way that Valentine's Day sort of shook out over the years. But, here we are again in this just hyper commercialization of the holidays. And I think it would be great if we brought back, or for the first time, maybe included a greater theme of what love with a capital L can really represent.
Yeah. The thing I love about love is it's the verb of God. And
Yeah.
I think religion's so trapped in nouns that if we just focus on the verb, then we can get rid of all the names and the labels and the wars and the shit that's tied to religion, which is heavy and thick and chokes most people. And
Yeah.
usually the more they believe in it, the more dangerous they are, unfortunately. But
Yeah. Yeah.
when you
That's
really
why yeah.
look at all the roots you've talked about, they all go back to a worship of natural cycles and rhythms and earth and gratitude for food. And it's like, how do we get so far from what really matters, And it's just it's in the Army, we have a saying, an acronym, SNAFU, which is actually in the dictionary, situation, normal, all fucked up. That's what SNAFU means.
Yeah. I think the biggest, issue at this point is the most blinding and the farthest away from, the things that matter is the commercialism. It's just it's so heavy duty, and we're so trapped in this materialistic point of view. And that was what was so, how can I love better? Gosh, that's such a simple phrase. It's almost like, it's just like almost dunce worthy. It's not really that exciting, but but it is the most profound, simultaneously. Yeah. And I think that often the great truths are, they're so simple that we miss them. They're so simple that we miss them.
Yeah. Well, look at God. I mean, how many people spend their life looking for God without coming to the realization that if God is God, there can be nothing here but God, or you don't have God. So
right.
I think ultimately sacred anything and worship of anything is really the worship of life itself, because that is God's experience of itself. If God is the source and sum of all that is, which is what God is, then there's nothing here but God. And it's our confusion about that leads to the dark expressions of it all. It's just like, if we could just see the harmony and the beauty of life and celebrate it together and nurture it, the whole world would change overnight. I mean, look how much money just the United States alone spends on military budgets every year. It's just disgustingly sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I could go on, but I think you and I understand.
It reminds me of something that I read in an Adyashanti book, and I love the way that he speaks about, all things spiritual. But he was talking about one of his first awakenings that was somewhat spontaneous, or was completely spontaneous for him. And he went wandering around his environment looking for something that wasn't sacred, because suddenly everything was sacred. And he ended up going into the bathroom to look at the toilet because he thought surely the toilet isn't sacred. But, when he arrived, it was like, no, that's sacred too. And it's speaking to exactly what you're saying, that, if everything is God, then everything here that we're experiencing must be under that umbrella,
Yeah, there's an old Buddhist saying, maybe you've heard of it. The question is, what is the Buddha? Do you know what the answer is?
I don't know. Enlighten us.
Shit on a stick.
Yeah. Well, then that goes back to what I was talking about, the personal stuff that I've got going on in my life right now, just that ultimate surrender of even this shit on a stick is sacred. I surrender. This is in God's hands. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's another saying in Buddhism, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. Because the Buddha cannot be embodied by any personage. The concept of the Buddha is love itself. It's to be awake to love, to be awake to the beauty of life and love and relationship. So when anyone says they're the Buddha, you're supposed to kill them, because it's completely distorting what the concept of the Buddha is really all about. But the shit on a stick means even shit is sacred. Without it, then we don't have anything to feed the microorganisms and keep the soil healthy. And a stick is a tool, so we used to dig with sticks and use them all the time for various things in the working with the soil. So I think, these types of things help us, link back to the real sacred elements of these things. And I think it's just so important that people realize that there's so much more to these holidays than the commercial shenanigans, right? And like you've alluded to and I've alluded to, that doesn't mean you have to go against it and say, oh, I'm not buying Christmas presents or Valentine's cards. It just means that you do it from a sacred place within yourself. So now that the intention is sacred, the energy is sacred, and whether a person's conscious of that or not, at the unconscious level, we're all in contact with each other. So we know at a deep level when someone's gift is sacred, whether it be a holiday or not. And I think that's what's really missing, because consumerism has brought us to a place in the world that has produced scientific materialism. And now everything is an object. The elitists want to own everything on the planet and create a commodity out of it and sell it back to you. And every person's now become a commodity, and your data is a commodity. So the point is, we've lost the subjective beauty of life, the feeling nature of it, the love of it. And everything's now just an object to be bought, sold, or traded for somebody else's advantage. And when you do that to nature, you've just signed your death warrant. And I think that's the opposite of holy, and that's the opposite of sacred. And that's why this conversation is so important to me, for sure. And certainly to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you have listened to even one episode of Paul's podcast before, then you will know that he is passionate, and some would say even fanatical, about the quality of the food he eats and where it is sourced from. That is why the Chek household only eats pasture-raised meat, wild-caught fish, and organic produce. And that is why we subscribe to Wild Pastures meat delivery service. Each month, Wild Pastures delivers a box of meat that has been raised by family farmers in the USA using regenerative farming practices. 100% grass-fed and finished beef, pasture-raised chicken, and pasture-raised pork, as well as wild-caught seafood. You can customize the selection in your box, add on extra when you know you will be feeding more people, or change your options each and every month. You might be thinking that this will be too expensive for you, but Wild Pastures' mission is to offer the highest quality meat at the lowest prices, because they want to transform the meat industry. And that means that more people need to be able to choose meat that is raised right. Their pasture-raised animals are part of a natural ecosystem. Their farmers use rotational grazing, practices that mimic nature, and so do not need to use synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, hormones, or antibiotics. This beautiful process doesn't require the external resources, such as massive amounts of GMO grain, required with environmentally depleting conventional methods. And best of all, the meat and fish taste amazing. And for Paul's listeners, Wild Pastures are offering you 20% off your subscription for life, $15 off your first order, and free shipping. Seriously, you can't find a better deal for top quality pasture-raised meat. Go to wildpastures.com/Paul Chek. You don't need a promo code. Just visit wildpastures.com/Paul Chek and start choosing the goodies you will have delivered to you in your first box.
So Easter happens at the same time as Passover. And again, these are spring season celebrations. So we have a lot of the same underlying fertility rites and themes underlying. There was a Germanic goddess of spring, Eostre, spelled Eostre. So a lot of people think that the word Easter actually stems from her name, although that's not a, we can't be certain of that, but it's a suspicion. Eostre, also Ostara was another goddess, similar names. So these were goddesses that represented the earth, the female body, the life-giving cyclical fertility, of the earth and of the goddess. And that was then swapped for the linear male salvation, right, of the resurrection story.
Mm-hmm.
So why does it happen at the same time as Passover? Well, that's because Jesus was, in Jerusalem for the Passover event. And so his resurrection actually historically aligns with, or his crucifixion and resurrection historically align with the Passover holidays. But again, before that whole story unfolded, we are in these pagan religions celebrating the resurrection of life during the spring season. And so a lot of the symbols that we just
assume,
we just go along with without thinking about where they came from. The egg is, again, a symbol of fertility. It's a symbol of birth. It's a symbol of the resurrection of life. The hare or the rabbit, the hare was the sacred animal of Yoster, that Germanic goddess. Did you know that I recently read that one single mama rabbit, theoretically, nobody gets eaten by coyotes, or dies from the elements, what have you. But theoretically, one single mama hare in 7 years, she and her offspring could reproduce 90 billion offspring, 90 billion rabbits. Billion.
From one rabbit?
From one rabbit, one original mama. And all of her offspring.
The offspring. I thought you were saying one rabbit could give birth to 90 billion. My God, that would be the most worn out birth canal on the planet.
Poor mama. No, but one mama rabbit and her offspring could theoretically, again, this is not taking into account, like nature and
death,
coyotes.
Yeah, but it's just their capacity.
Just the capacity. This is why the hare and or the rabbit, they're, the symbols of unchampioned, prolific breeding and reproduction and fertility and all of these themes that tend to arise in the spring when all the babies are being born in nature and all the shoots are poking up through the ground and, and buds are forming and everything else. So,
well, it puts the saying "fuck like a rabbit" into context, doesn't it?
It sure does. I ended up looking that up because my mom, it has dementia and I take care of her. I live with her and she's been feeding the wild cats in the neighborhood lately. And I can't get her to stop because she does it in the middle of the night. She's like she's up all night long feeding the cats. And so one single cat can produce and its offspring 40,000 cats in 7 years, 40,000, which to me was terrifying. But the rabbits at 90 billion, I mean,
that's a
clearly,
lot, man.
Yeah. So the rabbit, the symbol of fertility and spring. And then, even the egg, again, was the symbol of rebirth and life being born out of the darkness. And then Eastern Orthodox traditions took that and co-opted it, added the overstory of it's the breaking out of the tomb, right? Jesus coming. And so the egg was, again, they took symbols and things that were already in place and sort of tried to give them new meaning in order to more easily convert the pagans into the Christian, faith. So, the eggs were, in certain traditions, they were originally, now we dye them all different colors, but it was originally, they dyed them red. And that was to symbolize the blood of birth and the womb. And then later the blood of Christ, so again, you can see this process of adding new meaning to symbols that were already in place. And, and then you add in the commercialism and everything else and the layers that we've talked about and the further domestication, making it about the children. That was really a tactic that was used across the board in all the holidays, as if we make it about the children, make it family friendly, and keep it within the family as opposed to mixing and mingling with the classes. And, then it further domesticates and furthers the distance from those original pagan rituals that were often, seen as inappropriate, either rowdy or bawdy or licentious or, whatever it be. So, so that's the quick story on Easter.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
you were going to share some follow-up topics. Did you have some that you wanted to share on that?
What do you mean?
Well, you wrote in your notes.
As far as how we might celebrate Easter.
Yeah, you wrote, so what? Why does it matter where our holidays come from?
Yes,
why is ritual
too
important?
Yeah. So, well, let me back up first, because we shared a little bit about how we might do, Halloween differently with honoring our ancestors, and a little bit about how to do Christmas differently with the sacred nights, and then how we might shift, Thanksgiving back more towards gratitude, and then Valentine's Day, the opening up the greater theme of love to beyond romantic love. And with Easter, I think it's the perfect time to focus in on inspiration, right? And what's bubbling up internally in each one of us for the new coming cycle. What is being birthed in our creative minds and hearts. And I think also, for families, it's a nice time to get into the garden, maybe plant seeds with your children, which can correlate. It's just getting back in touch with all of these holidays, getting back in touch with the seasons, back in touch with the rhythms of the earth, and then noticing how those themes correlate. What we're seeing externally in nature, how does that correlate internally into what's happening inside of me? So that's some thoughts on, just easy ways that we might improve the way that we do Easter beyond like jelly beans and Cadbury eggs and plastic grass and Easter baskets. Like maybe we could get in the garden and in the dirt and the soil, plant some starters or plant some seeds, and talk about what's inspiring us in the season of spring. And then, to get back to your question, I think we've already covered it. Why is ritual important? It's important because we are collectively acknowledging what is sacred.
Yeah.
We're collectively, choosing to pause, to honor this moment, to hoist some theme up on the stage of humanity, and for us all to focus there, to put our divinely creative consciousness there on that theme. And we are therefore, literally creating our collective future together. Aside from powerful enough that we are teaching the younger generations through these rituals, but also, through our divinely creative consciousness, we are actually, creating our reality moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that I love is that there's in almost every one of them, there's a grounding back into the cycles of nature.
Yes.
And I think that's so critical today. How many people in the world don't even get their bare feet to touch the soil? That's a serious problem when you look just at the electromagnetic pollution component of that alone.
Yes.
Not to mention the grounding of the psyche into the earth, and how many people are so trapped in their heads all the time and they don't realize they're just turning into a buzz box. And then just to show how bad it is, you'd be lucky in most places of the world, if you're anywhere in or near a city, if you could put your feet on grass that's not covered in glyphosate that'll poison you. Just the whole, I don't know. It's
I'm right with you, Paul.
It's crazy. You read Rudolf Steiner's book on biodynamic farming and get down into the real core of what farming really is, and how the energies of the earth move, and look at it from a spiritual perspective. It's stunningly beautiful. And the fact that we've just destroyed all the sacred rituals and all the consciousness about farming and food and the cycles of life, and how many kids today actually realize what any of these holidays are about, and all they think about is how much candy they're going to get, or presents they're going to get, or it's just like, it's completely and utterly convoluted, and it's really just mirroring our own gullibility and bad education and confusion. And for me, it's this podcast today is just one more clear look at how religion, as we know it today, has convoluted, distorted, and perverted the sacred in these holidays, and turned them into something that only supports the rich that make the candies and the, the garbage that is attached to all this stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm very
Well, they've
grateful
become,
for your
yeah.
research.
Yeah, like you're saying, they've become so vacant, so empty, so commercialized, so materialistic, just completely devoid of any deeper meaning, right? And yes, and then the return to just it doesn't take much, right? Just the littlest, wink towards nature, and things start to get better. And one of my underlying core philosophies is that, the more we align with nature, the more we uncover our own highest human potential. And the more we distance ourselves, separate ourselves, try to out chemical her, out technology her, whatever it is, the more dysfunctional, sick, and miserable we become. So the holidays are one of our most powerful tools for beginning to incorporate that relationship back into our lives. Because again, it's this sacred pause where we're all in agreement, and there's more emphasis there. And so yeah.
I think we've got to stop. We've got to stop biohacking holidays.
Yes, we got.
It's just like the whole concept of biohacking is just a perfect match for everything we've just went through. It's just such silliness. It's like,
yeah.
I mean, I won't go off on it because it'll be a rant, but everybody that listens to my podcast knows how I feel about biohacking. Another hijacking of that which is natural and could easily be done if people just would pay attention to what they are. And, I mean, how many electromagnetic pulse tables do you need to compensate for the fact that you're staying up till midnight watching junk and eating junk and drinking junk and getting up at 6 a.m. to try to get to work? I mean, I don't know.
The most magnificent technology is right here. Right?
Yeah, it is. It's unbelievable. And what's unbelievable is how durable it is.
Yes.
It's like if you want to know how magical God and nature are, just ask yourself, what have I put my body through?
Look at how we beat ourselves up. Yeah.
The fact that you're still walking and talking, that's a miracle.
It is, isn't it? I know.
It's crazy as hell, man. True. But God loves it all. It's all part of the journey, part of the mystery, the magic, what I've learned in my lifetime and being a therapist and life coach to so many people is usually the deeper they get into trouble, the more fucked up their life is, the more amazing it is when they wake up and go, oh my God, it's like, that's where God's sense of humor becomes really magical. It's like it's like you finally get the punchline of the most amazing joke of all, yourself.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, as we close, feel free to share any contacts that you would like people to share, any offerings that you would like to share. Are you still running your 13 Holy Nights groups and your Tai Chi groups that you were running? Yeah.
So I've done a little bit of rearranging. I have 5 seasonal courses that are Qigong courses, but they're also seasonal courses. So we're looking at the gifts of each season. And then, of course, Qigong is also in there because that's my primary practice. So we've got Wood, Fire, Earth, Metal, Water. And the water course is the winter course, which is my 13 Sacred Nights guided experience. So this year, what I've done differently, they all used to have some live teaching element. And I've made the first 4 Wood, Fire, Earth, Metal evergreen. So you can purchase them at any time in the year. Everything's pre-recorded. You can dive into that theme and the practices that are offered. And then the Sacred Nights course is the only one that I'll actually be teaching live via Zoom. And it is going to be a year-long guided experience this year. So we're going to move through the 13 Sacred Nights together, which we've done in years past. And that is profound and incredible. But what I'm going to do throughout the rest of the year is meet with that same group once a month to move, to drop in, to center, to meditate, and also to go over what synchronicities are spilling out of our journals and out of the work that we did during the 13 Sacred Nights themselves. So that'll be a year-long guided experience. And that's all on my website, larajday.com. That's Don't sneak a U in there, and don't sneak a C in Paul's last name.
Right.
So LARAJDAY, larajday.com. And all my information is there. And the Oracle deck now is available on, it's on Amazon, it's at Barnes & Noble, it's on Simon & Schuster, it's at Beyond Words website, which is my publishers. That's beyondword.com, and lots of other places. Yeah.
And anyone that wants to listen to our first podcast together can, because we cover a lot of really great stuff in there too. I've had a few of my students say they either did your Qigong or various things with you. I know a couple of them did something to do with the Holy Nights, because they came back and told me that they loved it.
Amazing. Yeah, I got some feedback as well. I've met a few folks that have said, "Oh, I did your Holy Nights, and I found out about it through Paul and students of yours." So
yeah,
really sweet, wonderful. Yeah,
thank
you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm always grateful I have a chance to support you and share you. I love the natural mother energy in you. You're just a great example of mother. The archetype of the mother, I think, is really powerful in you. And so it's good to know that there's a place where people can go and get legitimate spiritual guidance and healing, and Qigong and things like that are very, very powerful. And it's something that we need more of. So I'm grateful I could share you then and today. And certainly something in the future will come. I know you'll reach out to me when you're ready and said, "Hey, look what I've got."
Yeah. And
I've investigated the truth of the politicians.
Oh, no, I don't want to go there.
That'll be 40 million books you'll have to read.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Paul. What a wonderful connection and conversation. And it's just always profound, always a delight, always, so much to connect on.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you to all of you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this amazing exploration of the holidays. I hope you're not upset that Lara has pulled the wool off your eyes. But if you are, don't worry. It's just your chance to recreate something sacred for yourself and make it beautiful, or just keep doing what you're doing. And maybe that's sacred to you. That's okay too. And thank you to our sponsors for all your love, your amazing products. Anytime you buy from the sponsors, you're putting money in the hands of ethical, moral people that are making highly nutritious, effective foods and supplements that work, or I wouldn't share them with you. And you're also putting money in the hands of biodynamic, organic, and free-range farmers, because that's where they get their source materials from. So you win, the earth wins, the companies that support us win, and a little goes to the podcast. And that is a quadruple win, baby. So lots of love to all of you. Thanks for anything you buy from the sponsors. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Thanks for hanging out with me and Lara. And I will do my best to bring something awesome to you next week. Lots of love. See you then. Thanks, Lara.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you for listening to Spirit Gym with Paul Chek and today's guest, Lara Day. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the show on the podcast platform of your choice. This podcast is available on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, and YouTube. Lara is offering Spirit Gym with Paul Chek listeners $100 off an in-person neurogenic Qigong session. You can find out more on her website at larajday.com. And make sure to let her know you heard her on Paul's podcast to get your discount. Also be sure to get Lara's Oracle deck, The 13 Sacred Nights. This is a guide to turning inward, an ancient winter solstice practice that teaches us to align with cosmic cycles and the rhythms of nature in order to discover our own inner light and the true gifts of the season of darkness. It's available on larajday.com and Amazon, as well as at bookstores. You can also connect with Lara on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at larajday. For more interaction with Paul and to share ideas and ask questions about topics discussed in this podcast, we invite you to join his Spirit Gym program and community. There are 3 different levels of membership where you can participate in live Q&A sessions with our podcast guests, access the members forum within the Spirit Gym community where you can chat with other members, attend weekly virtual meetups with Paul, and study his comprehensive Master Key online program. You can explore the options and subscribe today by going to myspiritgym.com.